following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Thank you, Tally Olson. I am indeed comfortably zoned in Alameda, California, right across the bay from San Francisco and across the moat from Oakland. I'm living up to expectations today. I always tell people that I talk to the most interesting folks on the planet, and today's no exception. Former Major League, 10-year veteran in the Major Leagues. He was an infielder. He had a book coming out that he has a book coming out that Hall of Famer Tony La Russa wrote the forward to. So with that in mind, this is going to be one hell of a podcast. Greg Pryor, welcome to the Zone.
Hey, Zig, and I'd call you Ralph, but I like Zig better. But it's wonderful to be with you, and congratulations on your history of taking good baseball news to the fans out there. And you've got a great history of yourself in baseball. But today we're going to talk about a few things about the game, and hopefully the fans will enjoy what we talk about.
Absolutely. Like to get to know you a little bit, and I find that the best way to do that is to ask you two questions. First of all, what music did you listen to growing up?
Oh, man. Hey, we'll take the whole time talking about that.
No, we have as much time as we need.
It's so. It's so funny that you're bringing that up right now because I'm out here visiting I'm in Marina del Rey, California right now. It's 11 o'clock Pacific time, and I'm watching the clouds burn off a little bit. The sun's coming out. It's absolutely beautiful, and my youngest daughter has invited me to come and spend my 70th birthday party here in Marina del Rey with them. And I told him I'd only do it on the one condition, is that I could pick the music and I could pick the volume. So we're sitting here this morning. We're sitting here this morning talking, and I told him I was gonna have 50 songs taped, and the kind of music that I listen to answer your question, it's going to be on. It's going to be on this at my birthday party when I have it out here in September. But I was kind of raised on, if you will, Elvis Presley and Jerry Lee Lewis and that old time rock and roll twang kind of stuff. And then the British invasion happened, and I was in college in '67, and I was introduced to some of the greatest music that's ever been played in the late '60s. And then when I got to Florida Southern College in Lakeland, Florida, for my freshman year in 1967, I was introduced to the Four Tops, and I could not stop playing the greatest hits of the Four Tops. That's one of my favorites. I could probably listen to it every day. But then the Beatles obviously came in '63 when I was in the ninth grade, and She Loves You, I Want to Hold Your Hand, and then the Beatles have kind of stayed in first place for me ever since that day. But Led Zeppelin pushed them. The Rolling Stones pushed them, and I certainly, if I don't even understand some of the new music that's out today because I don't listen to it. But if I was going to push play, it would be the Beatles, Led Zeppelin, and the Rolling Stones. If
you had one album to take to an island with you, and that was all you had to play, what would it be?
It would probably be Sgt. Pepper's. But let me just say this, that Sgt. Pepper's it was redone because they did they did the show in Vegas at the Mirage. The Beatles love they do a show there constantly every day. They have a show there in Vegas, and the soundtrack that they cut for the Love Show in at the Mirage, it takes some of the Sgt. Pepper's album and it tweaks it some. And it's just something that somebody ought to listen to. So all the people listening to the broadcast, if you love the Beatles, if you love Sgt. Pepper's, go listen to the cut that the remake of the Sgt. Pepper's done for the Broadway show there in Vegas at the Mirage.
All right.
How about you, though? How about you, Zig? I want to know about you, too.
I'll tell you, if I had one album to take to that far-off island that I was marooned on, it would be Mose Allison. I don't know if you're familiar with Mose.
No, but I want you to send me that when we get off the show here. I want to go listen to it because I'm sure that
I'll send you the best of Mose. How about that?
Yeah, that'd
the
be
best
cool.
I could do.
And then the other question was.
The other question is, what did you read as a kid?
Oh my goodness, that's a tough one because my parents made me go outside and play sports all day long. They didn't make me. That's what I did.
But they encouraged you.
I tell you what, I read the.
I'm just trying to get an idea what formed you in your formative years in terms of looking at life.
I read Stan Musial's biography. You know, I remember that one. From Pennsylvania,
Stan the
Musial.
Man.
Yeah.
And you couldn't have done better as a hero unless your hero was Monty Irvin, like mine. And in the second segment of this show, our mutual friend, who is Billy Staples, is going to be on talking to me about my boyhood hero, Greg Pryor. No, well, before that.
No.
It was Monty Irvin. So
how about that?
Stick around, everybody.
This is because of Billy Staples that you and I connected. Billy's been helping ball players for many, many, many years, and I got connected with Billy recently, and he said, "Hey, let me call Ralph and get you on Ralph's podcast." So that's how we got together, and I knew that I did some research on you. I've been looking up stuff about you. I probably know more about you than you know about me. That's okay. No. But I just want to make sure that when I agree to go on and talk to somebody, that I know I'll communicate with them, and I know that we'll communicate, which we are.
Which we are indeed. Let me ask you this, Greg. How did you get Mr. Mr. Tony La Russa, my mind blank for a second, to write the forward of your upcoming book?
Yeah, well, thanks, and it's an interesting story. I'll try to shorten the story because you'd have to go back to what it took me to get to the big leagues, number one. But when I got with the White Sox in '78 in my rookie year, Bob Lemon was my first major league manager for the first, to start a season. I was in the big leagues a little bit with Texas in '76, and Frank Lucchese was my first big league manager. But Bob Lemon was my first manager out, for opening day. And then Bob Lemon was replaced by Larry Doby. I played for Larry Doby. And then Larry Doby with the White Sox, Bill Beck was there. He was the owner. And then Don Kessinger was hired to replace Larry Doby. And then after Kessinger decided he was done, they hired this 35-year-old, 38-year-old guy named Tony La Russa for the White Sox. And it was almost like in a way we were almost the same age. I was 30 years old in '79. I think Tony was 34, 35. He might have been the youngest manager in the history of baseball at the time. So when Tony became a rookie manager, he came into Chicago, and obviously I was excited to meet him for the first time. A lot of the guys had played for him in AAA, but when I was there, I was around Tony for like 300 games in '79 and '80 and '81, and when he went on to finish his career and get into the Hall of Fame as a manager, the third most wins as a major league manager, I decided to put these stories down, and I didn't know anything about asking somebody to write a forward to a book, but I had this light bulb went off in my head. Pryor, call La Russa. He loves reading. He loves books. He's done a number of books himself. Call Tony and just ask him. So the quick answer is, I called Tony as my former manager, and I said, "Hey, Tony, this is Pryor." I said, "I want you to consider writing a forward to my book." And he said, look, Greg, I'm writing a forward to Ted Kubiak's book, one of his former teammates there in Oakland when he played for Oakland. And when he got done with that, he decided to go ahead and write my forward, and it's a great forward. I'm so proud of it. It's probably one of the best parts of my book, but that's how I got Tony La Russa to write my forward. I just simply asked him as my former manager to do it.
Wow. Now, you told me a story off air about how Tony read your book. He didn't just write a forward without reading your manuscript. You sent it to him, he read it, and he called you on something you hadn't told me about, but I'm curious. What did he disagree with you in the book? He still wrote you forward, but he disagreed, and you said, "Hey, listen, if you disagree, write it in the forward. Come back at me." I really appreciate that.
Ralph, I decided to write my book. Let me just tell the people listening, it's not like I'm a professional writer, but I had experienced a number of things in my book.
Or a reader, for that matter.
Yeah,
you got me with the needle yesterday. I'm going to get you right now.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You can go ahead. Go ahead. You can needle. I want to be back in the club. I want to be back in the clubhouse like we used to needle each other. Okay, you're not going to hurt my feelings, Ralph. You can say anything you want.
Well, you didn't hurt mine. Was comfortably numb. I knew we'd get along right there. You're the only person I've ever had a pre-production meeting with before doing a frickin' podcast, for Christ's sake. You're a professional.
No, I was going to do it the other day with you when we were on the phone, but I told you I would read the La Russa forward on your show, at which I've got it out. I'm ready to read it. I would have done this the other day, but I didn't have the book with me. So today,
hey, look, having the book before you could read out of it is always a good thing. Do me a favor. Read me something. In my language, my grandparents would have said, "Zug me a Geschichte," which means tell me a story. So,
well,
tell me a story, Greg.
I'm going to answer your question because it was a very astute question you asked me about what I told you the other day. Now, when I asked Tony to write the forward, the professional guy that he is, not only as a manager but as a fundraiser for his animal foundation that he's got, and a great representative of the game. You know, there's probably people out there that probably are sideways with Tony, and that's what comes with the territory when you're a major league manager. You know, somebody's going to like you, somebody's going to dislike you. So what? The game of baseball is great. Tony La Russa's record stands for itself. I don't need to defend Tony La Russa 1 second. But when he told me that he wasn't going to write the forward until he read my manuscript, I was like, wow, this is cool. He goes, Greg, print it out, overnight it to me to Fenway Park. That's where I'm working now. He works for the Red Sox. Dave Dombrowski, GM of the Red Sox, hired Tony out of Arizona Diamondbacks, and Tony got his World Series ring for the Red Sox there, another one. Anyway, Tony asked me to overnight the manuscript. I printed it out. He said he didn't want me to email it. He said, just send the thing, FedEx it. He said, I want to sit and read it page by page. Well, after he read it page by page, he got in touch with me again. He goes, hey, Pryor, you started talking down to me about me a little bit in your book. And I knew that before I sent him, Zig. I knew that before I sent it to him because I had written the book not expecting him. He's going to write the forward. So I was really apprehensive about what I was going to send there because he did a couple things that kind of ticked me off when he became a rookie manager there in Chicago, and I read about him in my book. And the story that he took most exception to, and that he responded back to me in the forward on, was the following. Back in 1980, we're playing the last 2 games against the Angels. And I was, I had been, this my third year in the big leagues. And he called me into his office and he said, Pryor, do you want to play third base the last 2 games? And in my history, no manager's ever given me the say-so about whether I play or not. It's either go play or don't play. You look at your name in the lineup. But Tony asked me if I want to play, so I said, yeah, I'll play third base. So we're playing the Angels. It's a day game on Saturday in Chicago, and I'm facing Tanana. We're up 4-2. and I'm getting ready to go lead off the seventh inning, and Tannen is still pitching. Well, I get ready to go in from third base to grab my bat to get ready to go hit, and Tony looks at me. He goes, Pryor, I'm going to make you part of baseball history. Now, I wonder what fans out there can guess what he was going to do to make me part of baseball history. You know, maybe some might guess. Well, he pinch hit a gentleman named Minnie Minoso for me.
Oh, wow.
Now, mind
what
you,
a connect. You have a connect to Minoso and Dobie and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
You're much more of an interesting baseball figure than I would have suspected.
Well, that's why I wanted Tony to write to forward, because, you know, there's a lot of people out there that are probably listening right now saying, Greg Pryor, who did he play for? But La Russa, they know him. And when Tony told me, when he wrote the forward and he put Major League Read in his forward, that made me feel really good. I don't know if I'll sell 100 or 200 books, but at least Tony La Russa said it's a Major League Read. So here I go. Tony La Russa is going to pinch hit Minnie Minoso for me. And I took kind of exception to that because, you know, I was trying to win the game. And then he and I got sideways after the game a little bit. And then I wrote the story in my book. It's one of my 27 chapters, the day that Minnie Minoso pinch hit for me. And Tony responded back in the forward. And I'd be glad to read the forward to you and the fans on this show if you want. I've got the book out in front of me.
I do indeed. I'm looking forward to that, Greg.
You tell me. You tell me when you want me to start reading Tony's forward, and I'll be glad to do it.
All right, here we go. 3.
You ready?
2, 1, 5, 9, 7, 8, 1. Oh no, I'm just counting numbers. Go ahead, Greg. Let's not make this too formal.
Hey, well, no, I'm just saying. This is your show. I'm just trying to be a part of it, man.
Believe me, Greg, I know it.
Okay.
And you're adding to it. I can't. To be serious, I can't thank you enough. I know you could do these things anywhere you want, and I appreciate you doing it with me, the Zig Zag Man.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about first Larry Doby, and then you read this. First, tell me one thing about Larry Doby, one thing about Minnie Minoso, and then read the forward.
Well, Larry Doby, you know, when I got to the White Sox, he was the hitting coach. You know, he and Bill Veeck went way back. Larry Doby was the first Negro to play in the American League, and that's a fact.
Bill Veeck brought him in.
Yeah, and so I was an Indians fan. When I was growing up, I lived near Akron, Ohio. I played Little League in Rootstown, Ohio, not too far from where Thurman Munson went to college at Kent State. So I have a connection back with Thurman Munson. We were both playing Little League in Ohio at the same time, just on different cities and different teams. But when I became an Indians fan, I mean Doby, Larry Doby, I knew Larry Doby from way back. Because Rocky Colavito was one of my heroes with the old Indians. So Bill Veeck and Larry Doby had a history with each other way back. And when I got to Chicago, it was an honor for me to be around a man that knew how to swing the bat like Larry Doby did, and the history that Larry Doby had in the American League. So Doby and I got along great. And one of the chapters in my book, it was the day that I hit my first 2 Major League home runs. Larry Doby was the manager and told me before the game that I was hitting second instead of 8th because it was Don Kessinger night in Comiskey Park. And Larry Doby come up to me, goes, Pryor, I'm hitting you second tonight. I'm taking the heat off of Kessinger. I'm going to bat him 8th. I'm batting you second. And I'm thinking, wow, Larry Doby took me from the 8th slot and made me bat second. Well, I hit 2 home runs and drove in all 3 runs to win the game in front of 35,000 in Comiskey Park on Don Kessinger night. That's my Doby story. And then you wanted me to write the story. You want me to tell you a story about La Russa, then, right?
No, first Minnie Minoso. Just a little something about Minnie.
Minnie. Oh God, Minnie. I tell you what, Minnie. I just wish everybody in baseball could have met Minnie, man. I wish I could have seen him play. Because when I got there, he wasn't playing anymore when I got to Chicago. But he would hit me ground balls before games, back in the days when the major leaguers used to take some ground balls to warm up. I don't know if they do it anymore, but back in the day, we would take ground balls as much as we could. We went to practice. Well, Minnie would grab a bat over by the batting cage and hit me balls down third base nonstop, balls after balls after balls. Well, one day he stopped, and he yells out, he goes, "Hey, Pryor!" I said, "What?" He goes, "Those hands will never carry a lunch bucket." You know, and at first, I didn't know what he meant. I didn't know what he meant. I'm thinking, lunch bucket? Me? Oh, yeah. No offense to anybody listening that ever carried a lunch bucket, but he meant that. You know, I mean, I was trying to show Minnie I was a good third baseman. I would catch every ball he hit to me, but then he would like crank it up a little bit, Zig, and he would like hit a ball, and if I messed up on it, if in practice I messed up on it, he would yell out, "Montequilla, Montequilla," and I didn't know what that meant until somebody told me it meant Butterfingers in Spanish. So Minnie said,
played in 5 generations, and he played in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. He was 59 years old, came up as a pinch hitter. He was from Cuba. He took a lot of heat. The blacks, of course, took heat, but the blacks who were from the Dominican, from Cuba, as many were from, they took more because people were prejudiced against them for 2 reasons. This is a crazy world we live in, but there is a definite psychosis going on that makes us still talk about prejudice and stuff in 2019. It's craziness in this world. But if you go back in baseball history, which reflects history as we know it, we get to see what happened. Martin Luther King is an example, called Jackie Robinson the father of the Equal Rights Amendment.
Well, you know, it's funny that where you're saying that because I grew up not really having a color barrier, if you will, because my dad was a high school coach and a teacher, and he taught an all-black school in Akron, Ohio, and I would go to school with him. And then when I got down in North Carolina in '63, that was my first introduction to segregation, if you will, because the blacks had their school and the whites had their school. And I went down there. I was in 9th grade, and I said, "Where's all the black kids?" And they go, "Oh, they got their own school." I said, "They got their own school?" I was not aware of it. But, you know, when you talk about Jackie Robinson, you know, I love talking about Jackie Robinson because I wore number 42 for the Yankees in spring training in '77. Here's what I wish that the history of baseball would have included more black major league players at this time in life. At this time. In the big leagues than there are because of what Jackie did and what he went through and what Larry Doby went through to pave the way for them to even be able to play in the big leagues. Okay, because I was born in '49, and you know I missed a lot of the stuff that you're a little bit older than me, but I kind of missed Jackie Robinson. I wasn't even born yet when he broke the color barrier, but. What year was it that Jackie Robinson broke into the big leagues? Do you remember?
In 1947, and I can tell you,
47.
As a New Yorker who grew up watching them, Willie and Jackie both took a game and took an entire game and put it in their hands. They could both beat you in so many different ways and Jackie was absolutely electrifying on the bases. Willie had power and grace and ability in center field that was unparalleled. Jackie had a ferociousness and a competitiveness that was beyond belief. He led that Brooklyn Dodger team, and imagine how the history of baseball would have been changed if blacks had been allowed to play back when Ty Cobb was playing, and Satchel Paige was pitching, and Josh Gibson was hitting unanimously. I mean,
yeah.
Willie
Mays. Willie Mays making that basket catch. When I first saw him do that on TV, I couldn't. I mean, my jaw dropped. I said, "How did the man do
and
that?"
When you got old enough to appreciate the catch, you realized it was the throw of that play that meant everything, because him getting the ball back in the infield sent the runner scampering back to the bases and kept the double play in order.
Yeah.
And it set the tone. That was the first game of the World Series in '54, and it set the tone for the entire series, and the Giants just romped. And
I never saw Willie Mays play in person. I'm sorry I missed that. I never saw Jackie Robinson, but I did play with some of the greatest black players.
Who was the greatest player you played with that was underrated in your eyes?
Oh man, underrated. Well, it's hard to. Let me try to think here. Nah, I tell you what, I there's nobody that really kind of jumps out at me, really, because I don't. I hate to say somebody because it's probably. I would say maybe Carney Lansford. I think Carney Lansford played third base.
Damn good third baseman. He played with the A's
Carney
a lot.
Lansford was good. I think he should have got his due. But they talk about guys that are underrated. There's some guys that if we had the mic open and we had callers call in, they would call in and say, oh, so and so belongs in the Hall of Fame. So and so belongs in the Hall of Fame. There's a guys on the fringe out there that would probably be the answer to your question. Because there's some guys that I think maybe should belong in the Hall of Fame and they're not. So evidently they're underrated because they haven't been voted in yet.
Did you play with Dick Allen?
I did not, but I heard stories about him. About how natural a talent he was, and I played with Bo Jackson, but I don't know if you had to take a player right now, would you take Bo Jackson or Richie Allen? I don't know.
Well,
I never.
For a career, you'd have to take Richie Allen, but Bo Jackson's career was cut down by that hip injury that caused the guy to write a book, It's Only a Bruise. And that, go ahead.
Zig, but same story about Bo Jackson, and I know Bo real well because we played together in '86, my last year, his first year. And
Bo knows Pryor.
After he got his hip replacement, after he got hurt when he played for running back for Oakland Raiders, he hit 37 home runs after a hip replacement. Nobody's ever done that. When they argue about the best athlete ever to play in the major leagues, or maybe the best two-sport athlete, I've argued with people on Facebook in the past, and people throw up names to me. They throw up Jim Thorpe to me. People think Jim Thorpe is a good athlete as Bo Jackson. Now, all honor to all the guys that we might put in place Bo Jackson as the best two-sport athlete. But, Dave Winfield, Wilt Chamberlain, Jimmy Brown, name them all. There's a wonderful list of players that were great two-sport athletes. But being close to Bo like I was and knowing how he could have gone from a Royal Stadium and walked across the street and run fullback for the Chiefs, had the Chiefs drafted him instead of the Raiders, Bo Jackson maybe wouldn't have suffered that injury, and he probably would have gone down as probably the best athlete of all time, inarguably. But right now, there's a good argument. There's people that say Deion Sanders and stuff like that. But for my money, Bo Jackson was the best in history. My point about Willie Mays, though, is that when he made that basket catch, you don't have little league coaches going out teaching that basket catch. That's how talented a man he was. And I just wanted to make sure that I got that in there because I honor the guys that came before me. When I broke into the big leagues in '76, I broke in and Gaylord Perry was pitching for Texas, and I was afraid to say hi to him because I honored him because he had spent like 15 years in the big leagues, and here I am a rookie. These rookies nowadays, they get there and they act like they've been there for 10 years.
Right.
Hey,
when you got called up, who was the coach or manager in the minors that told you were going to the bigs?
Yeah, a good question. I was in '76. I was in Sacramento. I was the Ranger AAA team in the Pacific Coast League. We took a road trip to play in Phoenix, Tucson, and Albuquerque. They were in the league, and in Tucson it was the Oakland A's AAA team. And after the game, Rich Donnelly, manager of my team in Sacramento, Pryor goes, "Pryor, come here. I need to talk to you in my office." And I'm thinking, "Uh-oh, what did I do?" So I walked in there, and it was a shock out of the blue. I wasn't expecting to be called up to the big leagues because over the winter the Rangers told me I didn't have what it took to make the big leagues. He says, "Pryor, the Rangers are calling you up to the major leagues. You're leaving tomorrow morning. You're going to be on the bench tomorrow night in Texas. But the problem is they're sending you back in about 2 weeks. You're going to go up for 2 weeks and you're coming back." But the bad news about me coming back didn't even sink in. All I heard, Zig, was, "Pryor,
going up.
You're going to the big leagues. You're going to wear a big league uniform. You're going to sit on the big league bench, and God knows you might get into the game." Well, I got into my first game.
Hey, Rich, I lived in Sacramento in 1976. You played at a ballpark that was really misfigured. I don't remember how, right off the top of my head.
It was Hughes Stadium, Zig. Hughes Stadium.
Yes. And I think Rich Donnelly was a very famous minor league guy, had been a minor league coach for a long time. Yeah. Sacramento was a hotbed for baseball. Dusty Baker came out of Sacramento. And, wow, I wish I would have remembered to keep track of Pryor when I was going out to the stadium to watch minor league baseball. Sacramento, warm nights. Oh, Sacramento was great for baseball.
Well, it was a football stadium. They had a big screen up there in left field.
Right, that's what it was.
I'm kind of embarrassed to say I only hit 9 home runs that year. But anyway, Bump Wills was the second baseman, Maury Wills' son.
Wow.
People might they've heard of Maury, but Bump was wonderful to play with. He had such a great attitude. He was almost he was acting like he was in the big leagues already, and he had a pretty decent big league career. And then at third base was Brian Doyle. Some of the Yankee fans that might be listening might remember Brian because
Denny's brother.
In '78. Brian Doyle helped the Yankees win the World Series against the Dodgers and was almost the MVP of the World Series in '78. So we had a pretty good infield back then. We had Doug Alt at first base. He played a little bit.
Doug Alt was from Sacramento, as a matter of fact.
Who's that?
Doug Alt was from Sacramento.
Oh, no kidding. That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, I had a great time there. Well, Donnelly told me to go up to big leagues, so that's how I went. I took a flight the next morning, and it was like a dream. I signed in '71. I got called up in '76. So I was in my sixth season in the minor leagues before I got called up.
And you had 10 seasons in the big leagues after that. You are what's called a baseball lifer.
Well, it's kind of like it went in stages, if you will. As I told you, the Rangers had told me in the winter of '76 I didn't go to spring training with the big club. They sent me my scouting reports, and every one of my scouting reports said all tools are short. He'll be 27. You can release him as far as I'm concerned. He's got AAA talent at best. That's what the farm director sent me that over the winter of '76. So I got busy and I started pounding more rocks. I started pounding more rocks, Zig, because I was on the verge of not making it. And when you think you're close, and I thought I was close. I mean, no matter what they said, you just have to do things to get better so that they're almost kind of like forced to take you. So I got up there, I got 3 hits in my first 8 at bats, they sent me back. The Rangers sent me back to Sacramento after 19 days, and then I didn't get back in the big leagues until April of '78 when I was in the opening day for the White Sox because I got traded to the Yankees right before the spring training of '77, and that was like that put a big delay in my career. I had to play another year in AAA in Syracuse. That'd be my third year in AAA before I got a shot to play in Chicago in '78.
Okay, I got to ask you this. Were you ever introduced at Yankee Stadium?
Oh, yeah, I was introduced.
All right,
I mean,
did it sound something like this?
Yeah.
Did it sound something like this? Now batting for Kansas City, number 16, Greg Pryor, number 16.
Well, his first name's Bob. What was his last name?
Bob Shepard.
You got it. There it is. But, hey, it's
right.
funny you're saying that because here's what I heard. When I'm on deck getting ready to take my first at bat in Yankee Stadium, here's what I heard. Hey, Pryor, you fucker. Hey, Pryor, you fucker. Strike out, Pryor. I didn't hear Shepard. I heard that asshole.
I got to tell you, as a former New Yorker, that's a good accent. I'm taking my hat off to you right now, and I'm leaving it off for the rest of the fucking podcast. You're done good. You're done good. So you already told me. You already told me the best part of why you decided to write a book, and that was so you could impress your grandkids, so they could look back.
Let me tell
that
fans.
Was wonderful. I thought that was wonderful. What a great reason.
Yeah, thank you. But let me tell you that when my dad and mom were from West Virginia. My dad played football for Wake Forest back for P. Ed Walker, back when they had leather helmets and no face mask. My dad was a fullback, and I have pictures of my dad. Well, my dad, he told me that Kent died in the poorhouse when I was a kid, when I couldn't do nothing. He goes, Pryor, he says, Greg, he says, Kent died in the poorhouse. And I'm thinking, Kent died in the poorhouse. So my dad told me I could do it. He had faith in me. Well, his name was Homer J. Pryor. He played on the team in 1912 in Duffy, Ohio. And I have a picture of my grandpa, my dad's dad, playing for Duffy, and they're all standing there. There's 3 sets of brothers on the team. There's 13 players, and they're all standing there like they're proud as heck in 1912. Well, I told you, Zig, that's the only thing that I have from my grandpa. I have one picture. No stories. I don't know what tobacco they chewed. I don't even know what they did. So when I got done playing, I had 3 daughters, and my youngest daughter said, Dad, why don't you write out some of your stories so that people will have an idea of what you did, and your grandkids will too. Well, I have 2 grandkids now. They're in the 2nd and 1st grade, and I finished these 27 stories, and I'm very comforted sitting here in Marina Del Rey today talking to you, knowing that my grandchildren will have 27 stories to read about their grandpa if I'm not here someday. And that's basically why I wrote the book. I wanted my grandkids to know what their grandpa did. And now I got fans that are reading my stories, and they're really appreciating what I did because some of these stories, they're about Yankees. I wrote a story about how George Steinbrenner called me a dumbass. I wrote about how Billy Martin told me I was going to be a big leaguer. The Yankee stories, there's White Sox stories, there's Royal stories, and there's Rangers stories, and there's minor league stories. So, I just tried to pick out the 27 best stories I could, write them out, and that's what I've got right here in my lap here, ready to read The Forward by Tony La Russa.
All right, here we go.
And I'm going to ask Tony to do this on his own. I would love to have Tony read his own forward, but maybe when I get enough confidence, I'll ask him.
Okay.
He might ask me.
All right. Well, why don't you give him my number, and you can have him call me and read it on the show.
Well, that'd be cool. But here goes. Forward by Tony La Russa. And I'll try to speed through. It's only about 4 pages, so bear with me here. I'll try to not stutter, and I'll read it just like Tony wrote it.
All right.
My first impression is that the setup for Greg Pryor's book. The Day the Yankees Made Me Shave, is creative and smart. It includes 27 stories that match the 27 outs needed to win a regulation game. From Greg's career, filled with many interesting possibilities, the ones chosen for his first book make for a major league read. In the preface, Greg's former agent, Steve Greenberg, rightfully claims that Greg's career went well beyond labels, like utility man or journeyman, which too often are meant disrespectfully. Our teams believe that a utility man made special contributions because of his versatility, and a journeyman meant that several clubs understood his value. A player does not earn 10 years in major leagues unless he is productive. In his 27 chapters, Greg mixes a variety of professional experiences and personal comments. He celebrates and suffers. He is feisty and funny. He is opinionated and ready to disagree and correct the mistaken. And as you will read, it was often with me. Above all, he demonstrates the toughness and determination of his father, George H. Pryor. His dad's example led Greg to success by persevering through setbacks at every step in his path to the majors. It all comes together to give the reader a rare inside look at the game. From this inside perspective, all the stories offer their own unique insights. Often there were references to the special people that I really enjoyed. There was Greg catching balls hit by a fungo bat in the hands of Yogi Berra and Elston Howard. Dave Parker's explosive speed, surprising Greg by beating out a routine grounder for a hit. Hall of Famers Hank Greenberg and Jimmy Connors playing tennis. Gaylord Perry's unique pitch causing ejections of Earl Weaver and Reggie Jackson. The relationship between Greg and Ed Farmer, from an opponent's headhunting pitch to a teammate and valued friend. And two behind-the-scenes stars, Al Zeke, Royals equipment manager, and Nick Roberts, a host at the White Sox Barts Room. There are two more examples that deserve special attention because they represent exactly what professional baseball's first priority is supposed to be. Teams compete for the best score, and some players step forward to lead their teams to championships. Two of the best leaders of our time are a part of chapters. A disgusted Eddie Murray watched Greg defeat his Orioles in '84 with Greg's second walk-off home run. Hal McRae deserves special recognition for his leadership role in the Royals' 1985 World Series championship. As part of this forward, Greg encouraged me to add comments to chapters when we were teammates or opponents. He missed our first interaction, which was part of his best Major League game. On September 8, 1978, Chicago White Sox honored Don Kessinger with a special night at Comiskey Park. The final score was 3-2, and Greg drove in all 3 runs with 2 home runs. I was the first base coach and observed that he had better than average power for an infielder. An interesting side note from that game was the effect of Greg taking his one and only greenie. The second thing Greg failed to mention was his first walk-off homer on July 6, 1980 versus the Oakland A's, which caused an epic Billy Martin locker room meltdown that is still talked about in Chicago. Greg appeared as a pinch hitter with the worst preparation. I remembered his power, and their pitcher fit his hot zone, but forgot to alert him to get ready. He had no time to get loose, and even had to borrow a bat. I messed up, but thankfully, Greg made us a winner and covered my butt. It's true that you learn more from your mistakes than your successes. The lack of notice to Greg was an example. July 20th, 1980 was the first and last time that an infielder on our team was part of the process of giving signs between catcher and pitcher, and Greg has that badge of honor. The Sox were playing the Brewers, who were filled with outstanding players like Paul Molitor and Robin Yount. We had a rookie battery of Rich Dotson and Ricky Salheimer. It was impossible to prepare them properly and unfair to them and our team to ask them to compete against such a lineup. We designed some help. Our pitching coach, Ron Schuler, from the dugout, sent signs to Greg at shortstop. Greg then gestured to Ricky who put the fingers down for Rich Dotson's pitch. It was a certain kind of success. We kept it tied in the bottom of the eighth, but eventually lost 7-6. It's worth noting that occasionally, Cal Ripken Jr., with his high baseball IQ, would signal the catcher with a pitch to call. The game on October 4th, 1980, ended up with both of us upset with each other. Greg started the game at third base. We were leading 4-2 going into the bottom of the seventh, and Greg was leading off. But I pinch hit Minnie Minoso. Our organization wanted to make a historical statement, and I supported it. Minnie's appearance at age 55 meant he would play in 5 decades. We were excited. Greg was not. To his credit, he was up front with his claims that winning was the priority and gimmicks had no place in baseball. I appreciated his desire to play, but not his remarks that he shares with the readers. There was an issue about playing the game straight as against conceding to history. I chose history because our position was set in the standings, and many deserved the honor. Finally, I relied on the old manager adage. The manager has the office, and the player has the locker. I made my decision. Minnie hit, and we won 4-2. My most difficult experience with Greg covered January 1982 into the latter part of spring training. Our organization had decided that Greg did not fit into our plans. Managers learn that you will never survive unless the players trust you. One of the toughest tests is how you handle a conversation that is negative to the player. The phone call to Greg falls into that most difficult category. The truth was your only option. The news was bad enough, and on top of which was Michelle's pregnancy with their first child. To his credit, and consistent with his toughness, Greg came to camp and worked hard. His reward was a trade to the Kansas City Royals, and it was a reward. Several times in the book, Greg describes the Kansas City winning attitude, teammates, especially George Brett, and Dick Hauser, and memorable experiences. The best of the latter was the 1985 World Series championship. Greg's description of the path to the ring is outstanding. Our final interaction was as opponents on August 26, 1984. It ended dramatically in Greg's favor. A hot Kansas City afternoon on artificial turf was punishing players on both teams, especially as the game continued into the 16th inning. Greg came to bat remembering that I gave up on him. I was thinking, don't walk him. Not really. As he trotted around the bases after his walk-off home run, I didn't stay in the dugout to watch the finish of his revenge. Over the years in Chicago, Oakland, and St. Louis, we worked to compete as a family. Each player was accountable for contributing his piece. Besides placing you in a position to win, it creates relationships that last forever. Greg was a key part of our White Sox family. Sincerity in your words and actions is a must. That's why my favorite words in his book spoke to his sincerity. I love being nervous before games because it helped me get ready, mentally prepared. Unless you care, you don't get nervous. Greg always cared. Tony La Russa. That's it,
Wow,
Zig.
Greg. That is some high praise and some very direct writing. I can't remember reading a forward like that. And you asked for it. You got it, and what high praise from him. Tell me,
well, as
I was thinking about this.
Zig, let me just say one thing real quick. That's the first time I've read anything out of my book for other people to listen to, and I chose that for you on this day, not to brag about myself or anything else, but I wanted the fans that listen to this podcast to really understand, to have an appreciation for the game, because I was with Tony when he broke in, you know, and he traded me. In fact, and after the '84 season, Tony La Russa sent me a congratulations note. As a former manager, he sent me a card saying, "Greg, congratulations." You know, as I said earlier in this podcast, say what you want about Tony La Russa, but this guy, he played in the minor leagues for 15 years. He was in the minor. He played in the big leagues, but he played minor league baseball.
We came up with Kansas City, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, 15 years. You know, so I played with and against and for some of the greatest baseball men of all time, and God bless them all. I appreciate all of them, whether they were nice to me or not. I don't care. They molded me into a better player, no matter what they did. But Tony
Greg,
Russa,
am I reading between the lines, or is your message that once you get there, you have to work just as hard to stay there and keep up? The work isn't over when you make the big leagues. Am I getting?
It's right on, Zig. Let me just add to that real quickly and tell you what happened to set that seed in my heart that once I got there, when I was with the White Sox in '78, when I left the Yankees as a free agent, and I signed with Bill Beck and Roland Heeman there, and I played in Chicago in '78. My first road trip, one of my first road trips that I took, was to Yankee Stadium. Here I go back to the team that offered me a 2-year contract. I turned it down. Steinberg called me a dumbass for turning it down, but I did. And I'm in the outfield running before the game. And I'm kind of like, I'm pretty darn scared, to tell you the truth, even though, because you don't know you can do something until you do it. I don't care what they say. You know, a lot of guys come to big leagues and they last for a month or two and then they're gone. But I was up there and I was apprehensive. Well, I saw Dick Tidrow running in the outfield, and we kind of got close to each other. And he goes, and I remember Dick from spring training at '77 with the Yankees. Dick Tidrow, Dirt. That was his nickname, was Dirt.
Dirt is right.
You know what? He yelled at me, "Hey, Pryor, come here." "Oh, man, you made it. You made it to a big league team." He says, "Pryor, let me give you some advice." And I'm thinking, yeah, anything, give it to me. He goes, "Get your first year in. Get your first year in." So from that moment on, Zig, all I did was that first year was just try to go day to day, because I was facing some of the greatest. I was facing Jim Palmer of Baltimore. I was facing some of the greatest pitchers of all time. And to survive my first year, that's what it took for me to get to the position where I could play maybe one more year. Then the White Sox signed me to a 2-year contract, so I'm thinking, well, maybe I can play 2 more years. I can just get 3 years in. Then it just added on. So you are so right to know that.
And you are so right when you say, don't, like your dad said, don't die in the poorhouse.
Yeah.
That is very motivating.
Hey, my wife and I started having kids in '82, and that's probably why I played 5 years in Kansas City. I was trying to feed mouths, man. I was trying to go out there and earn a living so I could take the bread home.
All right, my friend. Hey, let's make this the first podcast in a long line of them. You got a lot to talk about, and I'd be honored if you'd come back.
Well, hey, it's wonderful talking to you. Your listeners know, and they keep listening to you because you deliver, and hopefully I did a little bit today. I'm so proud to share things with you that your listeners will hopefully take and enjoy, because that's what we're here today to do, is to help people enjoy baseball a little more, and I think we both did it, and it's been an honor talking to you today.
We both did, and this is certainly my honor, Greg. So stay healthy. My best to your grandkids. I hope you get to watch them play some ball.
Do you mind if I tell people how they can get my book?
No, I'd be very appreciative.
Okay, fine. My book is in hardback, and I'm signing autographed copies. It's limited edition. Once I get through 300 of my first just 300 books, I won't be doing the same book again. It'll be a limited edition. They can go to GregoryPryor.com, and they can order it there, or it's GregoryPryor.com, or they can go to Amazon, and they can download the day the Yankees made me shave for $10, and they can read all 27 stories whenever they feel like it.
Okay. Hey, Gregory, was your mom, when your mom was pissed at you, did she call you Gregory? Or was that Gregory?
We had 6 kids. She probably called me by my brother's name.
Oh,
no,
okay.
I don't.
Yes. I understand that one too.
I do this. My mom always made sure I had a freshly laundered uniform every time I played. I remember that, and I it meant the world to me that my mom pulled my uniform out of the dryer and said, "Here, Greg, here's your uniform." I felt good going to games because of my mom.
Nice. What a nice way to end the podcast. Thank you, my friend, and thank you, everyone, for listening. I am the Zig Zag Man, and you are comfortably zoned, and I'm appreciative of your listenership. And, Greg, thank you again.
Thank you, Zig. Talk to you soon.
All right. Adios, everybody. The proceeding was a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production. Thank you for listening.